Hey, financial freedom seekers, Simon Dixon here again. Hope you had a good weekend. Today we're going to be talking about another country that banned Bitcoin and the infamous Bitcoin ban. We're going to be going through all the different types of bans, the ones that have come recently, and what I do and what others could decide to do as a result of these Bitcoin bans. So let's jump straight in with the headline. Thailand has banned Bitcoin. So what does that mean? Well, there are 4 different types of bans, and we're going to go through each one, and we're going to go through the consequence of each one for the country and why it will usually end up being reversed. But firstly, will Bitcoin get banned? Let's take that question. The answer is absolutely yes. Did you think that we're going to go through the path of giving everybody the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and have a fixed supply without some governments getting insecure, either through corrupt reasons or through ignorance, and thinking that it's a good idea to implement some kind of ban? If you thought we were going to go on this amazing path, if you look at the adoption of Bitcoin for 13 years, it's essentially been the highest performing asset in history. And if you take out the noise in between, it's just been in a 13-year bull market with corrections in between, based upon people getting scared about things like Bitcoin bans and fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And if you believe that Bitcoin was going to get banned and then use that as a reason not to buy it, then you can see the impact that that would have had on your finances. I'm not saying the future equals the past. I'm saying that I am positioning myself for Bitcoin being an integral part of the demand for money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply, increasing over time. Why? Because of the actions of governments and because of things like Bitcoin bans. So let's go straight into the infamous Bitcoin ban. There are 4 types of bans. Thailand has done the 3rd one, which I will go through, which is a ban on payments. So let's just go straight into each one and the consequences. So the first one is the Bitcoin banned mining. And this is a case of pretty much what happens in China. Now, for those of you that don't know the history, China flip-flopped between promoting Bitcoin to banning Bitcoin to promoting Bitcoin to banning Bitcoin ever since 2013, and more recently got a bit more aggressive in its implementation. And what that means is that in a ginormous government that governs like 1.4 billion people in the world, of the whole 7.5 billion that we're at right now, you have a ginormous government which is led by the China Communist Party, and those that are most connected to the miners get a backhander from the miners, and it continues in that particular province or region if you give the right backhander to the right person. And you can also mix in some free electricity, which is why a lot of it went there. Now, the rest of it that doesn't get away from that, the production of mining goes abroad. So China was built upon the industry of being able to use its ginormous and cheaper labor force to take 1 billion people out of poverty into the middle class by producing things cheaper and exporting those abroad. So by banning Bitcoin mining, it means that the production of Bitcoin has gone abroad, and that's exactly what happened. So this infamous Bitcoin ban, in most cases, has always led to a correction in the price from the short-term people that don't understand the trends here, to Bitcoin reaching all new time highs when it becomes more distributed and more harder to kill as a result of more geographical diversification. So each country that bans Bitcoin mining leads to that mining power creating a massive opportunity for what's known as a difficulty adjustment, which is the mechanism by which Bitcoin proof of work still survives no matter what happens, because the more people that stop mining, you get a difficulty adjustment. It becomes easier to mine Bitcoins in another country, or the more people mining, you get a difficulty adjustment up, and the harder it becomes to mine Bitcoins. The more countries ban it, the more easier it becomes for other countries to mine Bitcoin, and you end up with a migration and more geographical diversity in the mining power. Now, a lot of that went to the partner of the trade war, United States. So a lot of it, a big Bitcoin mining industry emerged in Texas. Full disclosure, invested in a few companies, both in China and in Texas, that were doing that. And a migration of mining, a difficulty adjustment. It was all built into the maths and code when Bitcoin was produced. It was factored into it. So then a bunch of people see the headline that were fiat thinkers, and those fiat thinkers were just seeing Bitcoin as a mechanism to make more fiat, and therefore they ended up trading, creating a taxable event, dumping at the bottom, buying at highs, and then running away saying Bitcoin's a scam. I'm going to stay away. Okay, then the difficulty rate adjusts, and Bitcoin becomes stronger and stronger and stronger as the opportunity goes to another country, and as mining gets more diverse, and the production of mining just simply enters to another country. So then you end up reversing that decision when you realize, actually, in the upcoming currency wars, being able to have a seat at the table in the production of Bitcoin is actually an important geopolitical strategy. So you end up encouraging the production of Bitcoins in your country, just like many other countries realized it's important to support the industry in times of currency wars, sanctions, where you have to promote things in your domestic economy, when you may end up on the wrong side of geopolitics, just because your leader decides to invade some country, and then you end up on the wrong side of geopolitics, and all of the production of those Bitcoins is happening abroad, and you've lost a very important tool for domestic survival in an environment of currency wars and financial weapons and mass destruction being thrown around. Bad idea. However, everyone needs to learn through doing. So that's the big Bitcoin mining ban. The next one is the exchange ban. The exchange ban is the ability for you to go to sign up to a financial institution, Bitcoin and crypto exchange. Full disclosure, I am a shareholder in many of the largest crypto exchanges in the world. Essentially, by banning the exchange of Bitcoin, you make it hard for people to take their Bitcoin and convert it into your local currency, fiat currency, or for another cryptocurrency as well. The end result of that is essentially all of the transactions go to other exchanges. So this did happen in China as well. So what happens is that you lose all of the tax collection and data that you need in order to do your money laundering prevention goals. So governments have several goals, and we've got to get inside the head of a government to not be surprised by this, and to not make short-term stupid decisions based upon not understanding the bigger macroeconomic picture here. So when a country bans the exchange of Bitcoin, what they do, so when China did it, it meant that the exchanges just reset up abroad. So firstly, the companies all set up in Singapore, and then their locations either stayed in China to keep the jobs there, and were allowed through some kind of mechanism, backhander or something, but they weren't allowed to convert into the local currency. So then you get a migration of all of your Bitcoin into somebody else's currency. So if they exchange, they then now use another currency in order to exchange it into. It drives them into decentralized exchanges, whereby they don't need to sign up and give all the data and KYC. And so you end up promoting the exact opposite of what you originally intended to do. And so what happened when China banned the exchanges is it all went to Singapore, it all went to South Korea, and it all went to Japan, who all implemented. Japan was one of the first countries in the world to see the long-term trend, because culturally, Japanese culture is have a 100-year game plan. They could see that regulating the industry was the key to collecting the taxes, and getting all of the data one needs in order to prevent the criminals that are exchanging their Bitcoin from illicit means into local currency, and then you lose all of that data, give it to another country, and then anytime you want to prevent crime, you have to go to court order, a subpoena, and beg to somebody else's country's regulator in order to get that data, so that you can then do that. So you make your life much more expensive, much harder, and you give up all the tax that you could have gained from the growth of the highest performing asset class in history. Dumb move number 2. What's dumb move number 3? Well, dumb move number 3 is payments, and in some sense, short term, it is actually quite a smart strategy, but long term, it removes your competitive advantage. Now, I understand as an elected official, you might have 4 years to prove that you are the best politician ever, and therefore you delay gratification in the long term and make short-term decisions in order to get re-elected. And unfortunately, that's the cycle of politics, where 4 years is far too short in order to make the impact that you need, and therefore everyone is driven to short-termism. And you might do what Thailand did, which it copied from Indonesia: ban payments in Bitcoin. Now, initially, this is a fairly, if you are a country, smart strategy, because what you're essentially doing is saying that you want everybody to transact in your currency so that you can control it, you can collect tax on it, and you can implement your anti-money laundering regime on that through that currency. But let's be factual here. It's about making sure that it is exchanged into fiat at point of sell. So therefore, if there are any gains there, as Bitcoin is in a 13-year bull market, and the gains have been so significant that you can collect your piece and your tax. Okay, that's what the country is there to do. It's there to collect this tax so it can redistribute it in the way that it sees fit. And depending, it's either done through democracy or it's done through corruption or whatever it may be in your country. But that is their stated goal, and a big part of it is supporting the currency. This is very much like in China, the People's Bank of China, the central bank in China, has these things called capital controls, which means that you are not allowed to hold more than $50,000 in foreign currency. And so when China was exporting all of these goods as a nation, the dollars that it was, when it exports to America, come into the People's Bank of China, and then they're forced, in order to be converted to the local currency, the yuan, renminbi, and therefore the People's Bank of China, the central bank of China, ends up building vast dollar reserves, and it can print its own currency as people demand dollars, and it keeps the dollars. So what this means essentially in People's Bank of China is that when America inflates its currency, it exports its inflation over to China, because it prints more money in order to exchange those dollars, but then it holds the currency that has the most traction as a short-term store of value, and then it invests it in treasuries, and it now ends up with $4.5 trillion of debt to the US, where the US government owes China $4.5 trillion, and you end up with this interesting, more symbiotic, peaceful nation where one is producing the goods, the other is producing the financial goods. But when relations go bad in times of war, you end up with the deletion of those treasuries, financial weapons of mass destruction, which then leads to weapons of mass destruction and war. But anyway, I digress. Banning payments is very similar. What you're essentially doing is you're saying you can hold your Bitcoin, You can exchange your Bitcoin, you can mine your Bitcoin, but whenever you want to purchase a good with it, you have to convert it to the local currency. So you go to an exchange and then you spend that so that then we can collect the tax and we can keep the data in that process. But what this does is, while it may seem like a short-term sensible strategy, is you end up losing, again, all the payment infrastructure where people go offshore in order to spend their Bitcoin, and you have a kind of war on drugs style budget that you have to implement. You know, a much more sensible strategy from the war of drugs is that rather than preventing people from smoking weed, it was to actually allow for it to be traded online, to prevent more crime and allow it to be legalized so you can tax it, regulate it, so that people don't have to go on the streets with gangsters risking their life in order to purchase it, which they were never going to stop doing. And they don't have to purchase it from somebody that has no regulations in terms of what is in that substance, and therefore you end up with lots of chemicals and all sorts of stuff with no way of controlling it. Go to Amsterdam and you can experience the vast array of knowing what the substance has and the industry. And then when you go into, for example, dark markets, you can see that people are illegally buying weed, but they have a rating system that takes drugs off the street, allows people to purchase it in a more safe environment, and then you have to have a ginormous budget to try and tackle the war on drugs, put loads and loads of people in prison, have a very violent industry that caused more death and destruction rather than just allowing people because they were going to do it anyway. So you create a similar level war on drugs on the process of trying to do that, which is why the final ban is very rare, and you don't see it much, which is the banning of holding Bitcoin. Now, the banning of holding Bitcoin is where you end up with this crazy movement towards people inventing technology that allows for the decentralized exchange of it, driving it into a black and dark market, you losing, making it more unsafe for people to consume, driving people into black markets, and then you having this ginormous budget like the war on drugs on trying to have your war on crypto. All of the data, all of the opportunity, all of the jobs, all of the tax, all of the payments, all then goes to another country, and then you lose the production from mining, you lose the data collection, you lose the tax, you lose everything. Dumb strategy number 4. It's why over the 13 years, despite Bitcoin being used in ways that governments may not want it to be used, i.e. used as a store of value, which allows you to actually generate a wealth effect so that you can spend your wealth rather than consuming on debt and ending up in debt slavery. In the end, if you really care about your country, if you really care about your people, and if you really care about your companies, then giving people the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and have a fixed supply could generate the largest wealth effect in your country that could end up becoming the demise of your country because you are focused on getting people into debt slavery inadvertently or overtly because you copied the strategy of the Bank of England that was a strategy in 1694 to fund wars, that was copied by America in 1913 through the Federal Reserve Act, that was then exported globally when America decided to renege on its agreement to back its currency by gold in 1971. And you all copied that money and you got your nations into debt slavery, which drives more wealth inequality, which drives more consumption-led bad malinvestment based upon the fact that your currency goes down in value, eventually leads to the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme that ends up with 2 or 3 or 4 outcomes that I've covered in previous videos, which is that you end up either hyperinflating your currency in order to support it, which leads to the destruction and wealth of of all of your people, all of your companies, and all of your countries, which then leads you into taking a predatory loan from economic hitman at the International Monetary Fund. And if you don't like their terms and conditions that come with that, when you lose your sovereignty from your country, you then turn to China's Belt and Road Initiative in order to borrow some money there. Or you end up looking to do something which is what you prevented doing in the first place, which I believe is the model that El Salvador is following right now, which is through mass destruction, through mass desperation, and through massive reaching the point of no return, you end up making Bitcoin legal tender. You end up creating an application that allows people to convert and preserve their wealth in Bitcoin and convert it to fiat currency. And you end up issuing bonds backed by Bitcoin so that you can become more sovereign and reverse the effects. Now, the problem is that because you have a 4-year term, you probably won't do that. You'll focus on short-term strategies rather than long-term strategies, and it won't work in favor of your country. So short-term, it's stupid. Long-term, it's stupid. And it's why. Does that mean that governments won't be stupid? Absolutely not. So what happens when countries ban Bitcoin? Well, it creates a FUD wave where all the fiat thinkers in the world that were using Bitcoin as a mechanism to make more fiat end up panic selling and saying, I told you, or not buying in the first place and saying, I told you so, and you end up with a short-term correction. Now, if you're a Bitcoin thinker, the lower the price goes, and if you're accumulating every month in a panic, in not a panic form, and you've got your investment strategy figured out, you're protecting for different things, then you get an opportunity to accumulate more Bitcoin the lower the price goes. And then the demand for money you can own, money you can spend, the money that has a fixed supply works through the magic of the markets. And you just have to have a longer time preference in terms of your thinking. And so that is the reason why. But the big one that everyone's worried about, or that people are saying, this is the reason why I'm not buying Bitcoin, because it can be banned or it's digital. And so therefore I hold gold. Firstly, gold and Bitcoin are not competition. Gold is a great mechanism for preserving your wealth, particularly if the internet goes down and you haven't held it at a custodian. Most people hold it at a custodian, and therefore it's similar to holding your money at a bank, in most cases subject to seizure, all that type of stuff, and it's very hard to transport globally. So therefore Bitcoin does what gold does what Bitcoin can't do, and Bitcoin allows you to store value and transport it globally. And is backed up by the world's largest supercomputer, so no one government agenda can take down the entire network because it's distributed in the largest supercomputer in the world. But the big one that everybody's scared about is some ginormous government level coordination of banning Bitcoin mining, banning Bitcoin payments, banning Bitcoin exchange, banning Bitcoin holding in a coordinated effort across all different governments simultaneously. And therefore, because of that off chance that that might happen, I will not take a percentage of my wealth and put it in the highest performing asset in history that allows you to own it, to spend it, and have benefit from a fixed supply. And therefore, rather than diversify into it and bet a part of my wealth on it, I'm just going to stay on the sideline forever. And the more people that do that, unfortunately, will be on the wrong side of financial history from my perspective, and they're not prepared for more outcomes, because gold protects you from one outcome, holding fiat assets gives you one outcome. You know, you're essentially, if you're holding dollar assets, you're betting on central bank digital currencies bailing out the banking system when the Ponzi scheme reveals itself. And I think that is a good bet that that will happen. If you're betting on gold, you're betting on large geopolitics and the need to own your own money in a physical location in case the internet and infrastructure and grid goes down. It's the doomsday protection that allows you to preserve your wealth because it's done it for 5,000 years. Now, preserving your wealth when you made a lot of wealth, or a percentage of your wealth as you're making it, is a good idea, but it doesn't make you wealth. And that's where the speculative store of value and Bitcoin being a more speculative has created this world's largest asymmetric information where some people think it's a Ponzi scheme, a currency just for drug dealers, a scam, and a get-rich-quick scheme in order to make more fiat. And because those people think like that, it creates undervalued price long-term as the demand for money, the demand that you can own, spend, and has a fixed supply increases. As people start to realize that, you end up one of the most interesting trades in history. Now, eventually, if the whole world knows that, then Bitcoin can act as a better digital gold, but with internet and infrastructure risks. Versus a physical hard commodity that most people hold in a custodian that preserves their wealth rather than holding it for what it's actually designed to do. Right, I've gone on a massive tangent. We're talking about bans. So if this large coordinated attack happens, I still believe in currency wars, geopoliticians having different agendas, countries taking advantage of opportunity, game theory. And because countries all have their own agenda, they'll see it as an opportunity. And if one thing is apparent, it's that geopolitics cannot maintain goods just like they couldn't maintain a gold standard. They couldn't, create trade wars, trade currency wars, because they're looking out for the interest of those fake artificial borders that humans put on the world and the map in order to make countries more competitive. So you have two choices. Either you don't buy it because of the big boogie monster, global ban, central bank digital currencies, coordinated attack, and if you don't buy it, then maybe you're right, but you missed out on the highest performing asset in history as the demand for money you can own, money you can spend, and money that has a fixed supply goes up. Or you can just decide that it's a responsible strategy would be to bet a portion of individual wealth, company wealth, or country wealth, or central bank reserves on Bitcoin, even if it's just a small amount there, which is where I think the demand for Bitcoin goes up, because game theory, the free markets, and the stupidity of governments over time will teach everybody these lessons from my perspective. And it's not a foregone conclusion, but I think it's probably one of the best asymmetric bets that governments will continue to be stupid, and countries will continue to have currency wars with each other, and therefore the need for sovereign money from both the individual company and country level is something that I'm willing to bet a portion in a risk managed way. And so if you would also like to understand how to do that, I created a completely free membership portal for anybody that would like a free 4-part video series. I invested $1 million of my savings live, showed exactly how I do it. It works for $10, $100, $10 million, $1 trillion. The same allocation. You can get that 4-part video series at retirementplanb.com/book. You can also get the book that I wrote over a decade ago, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Future Before Governments Go Bust, as a PDF for free. I'm writing a new book to update on the rules of money, which will be coming out soon. And even if you want to do the long and you want to binge, there's like a 12-hour masterclass, all completely free. Head over to retirementplanb.com/book. Why am I doing that? Because you are alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some are going to get hurt, others are going to do really well, and I want as many people in the world to get on the right side of financial history. If you like this video, then please do like it, share it with someone that might be interested in watching it and care, and also hit that bell symbol on the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the bell symbol, hit all, and YouTube will notify you each and every time we go live. And my job is to ensure that you have the information that you need to stay on the right side of financial history. And we're going to be doing it with peace. We're going to be doing it love. We're going to be doing it with unity. So I'm going to get back to work. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.